Welcome back to another edition of Breaking Bet here on this Thursday, June 6th. The calendar has entered the summer months. And before we go on summer break, guys, we have the best time of the year with the college baseball postseason. We got the super regionals this weekend, and how to bring in my guy, John Bollman, as we do every week, to just talk a little bit about what we saw last week in the regions, like were we shocked by anything, and what we're looking at in these super regionals. But John, thanks so much for joining me, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me on again. No, I think last week, there were a lot of shocks and then a lot of things happened that was expected, right? Like we had 7 of the top 8 national seeds make it through, which is pretty expected. But then the one that didn't was Arkansas at home, and with their loss being to Southeast Missouri too. Like that is obviously a massive surprise. And then I think the other one in general is, right, all those 2 seeds kind of really struggled. And we thought it was going to be one of the strongest 2 seed tournaments, ever. And it ended up being a lot of 3 seeds doing well.
Yeah, a little upset about some of the teams that I had. So obviously last year, we talked about it. Wake Forest was the team I had preseason. I primarily just added on them all throughout the year. And one thing I noticed this year compared to last year is the sports books, especially DraftKings, constant movement. I think a lot of it has to do with people are starting to bet this sport more, and now it's getting more handle and things are starting to move quicker and more drastic. But this year I kind of learned from the failures of Wake Forest last year. I wanted to take a bunch of teams I thought could have a really good shot at good numbers, and I had a very diverse portfolio, John, and unfortunately, about, I would say, 50 to 60% of the teams I had, albeit some of them were just like tasters, small tickets, nothing too big. A lot of them got clipped, but my big one was Mississippi State. And, I was really upset about Mississippi State. That was a series they should have won, and I voiced my frustrations at the end of last week. Ample opportunities to beat Virginia. They had them on the ropes in 2 games, tight games late, and they made the mistake where Virginia made the play. And that was upsetting. And obviously Arkansas not being able to get out of their own region again. This just seems to kind of be the thing that's really hurting Dave Van Horn's program. And it wasn't a gimme because Kansas State's a tough team, right? And even SEMO, no pushover. But they were one of the best teams in college all year. And you can't win your region in a relatively winnable path. It's a problem.
For a second year in a row.
It's just something that I thought was a little bit frustrating. Obviously, LSU couldn't come home in the decider. On Monday, I talked about my extreme displeasure for Jay Johnson's coaching decision to put Gage Jump in and make Nate Ackenhausen in. And then obviously Oklahoma State couldn't do it. So it was a little bit of disappointments, but I do have a few big tickets left. So I'm hoping we can get those through onto the College World Series for next week. But before we dive in here, we got a comment from my guy Crutch. Good luck this weekend, guys. Crutch, thank you, friend of the show. Best of luck to you as well, my friend. All right, John, it's time. We're previewing the Super Regionals. This, in my opinion, is my favorite round to bet. While the regionals themselves are the most chaotic and there's arguably the most opportunity just because there's so many games, there's 64 teams that are just duking it out. It gets a little tiresome towards the end of the weekends because now you're trying to really dig deep. What starter is a team going to throw? Are they going to run a guy who threw 50 pitches yesterday out there from the bullpen if they need it? This is the most straightforward weekend we have in the tournament, John. This resembles a regular weekend series, best of 3. It takes a lot of the guessing out of it. And I feel like this is an opportunity we have this weekend in order to take advantage of some lines.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Like this is the one weekend where, we actually know starters, we actually know relievers and when they'll be available and their workloads. And, it's, like you said, it's a lot of the guessing games taken out of it. So you get as much information as you can possibly get in the college game for this weekend.
Exactly. Before we get started into the games and some series, is there anything that you're looking at in particular for this week? A specific team, maybe a certain player?
I think nothing really specific like teams or players, but I think I'm looking out for a couple trends.
Mhm.
One would be how many of these games or how many of these series are going 3 games. If there are a lot of sweeps. And I look back last year, it was about 50-50. So I'm very interested to see how many go 3 games. And then I think the other thing that interests me is how many upsets will we have, because a lot of the lines, they're only maybe 2, maybe 3 series that are like under minus 200, I want to say, which is the Georgia one, Oregon State, and Kentucky. Or no, Oregon State, Kentucky, Georgia, and one more maybe. But I think all the other lines are at least 200 or higher, which, obviously
Clemson, Florida.
implies Clemson, Florida. Okay, that's the other one. Yeah, Clemson's like minus 175. So, but all the other ones are massive favorites. So, I mean, that implies that we're not going to get too many upsets, right? But I feel like this year we've kind of had a lot of chaos throughout the year. So I'm interested to see if that holds up.
Yeah, same for me. Some of the upsets I was even surprised by. I had a fair amount of upsets heading into the regional weekend, but it just ended up not being the upsets that I thought. But nonetheless, it just kind of goes to show how deep this tournament can be, and it's all about timing. You catch the wrong team at the wrong time with the wrong matchup, and look at a team like UConn. I didn't think UConn was going to make it out with Oklahoma and Duke in there. And you know what, man? When I looked at UConn before the tournament started, I was like, listen, UConn is a great run program. Jim Pender's, his program is fantastic. And maybe some of it is me comparing them to 2022. But I looked at them, I'm like, their best starter at the time, now it's changed because how well they did this weekend. But going into the regional weekend, their best starter had an ERA of 4.
In the
2
Big
years
East.
ago,
Yeah.
exactly, in the Big East. And 2 years ago, I think they had all 3 of their weekend guys, mid threes or better. And, they come out here, they beat Oklahoma basically twice in a 3-game series in a 4-game weekend. They shut down Duke. They allowed exactly one run in 3 of their 4 games. It was mind-blowing. And you know what, John? That's where we're going to start. We're going to go with the UConn Huskies that are going to Tallahassee to face the Florida State Seminoles. It's obviously a big game 1 price. To the left is the game 1 prices. And Florida State throwing Carson Dorsey, which I think is a little bit surprising to people that it is not Jamie Arnold on Friday. Link Jarrett said he's saving him for game 2 because he wants the rest to be exactly how it was. He wants Dorsey to feel comfortable off a full week rest, exactly Friday to Friday. And on your right, you see the series prices. And what you might notice when you've been shopping around, guys, is a lot of what the game 1 numbers are very, very close reflections of what the series prices are because of the big indications the first game can provide. That being said, John, how do you attack not only just the game 1 here, but the matchup for the entire series?
Yeah, I think this one's a little more difficult because like you said, I didn't expect UConn to not just make it all the way out of the regional. I didn't expect them to go anywhere in that regional with Duke and Oklahoma. But it also worries me because I don't know if UConn was actually playing that well over the weekend or if Duke and Oklahoma kind of just had stinkers, because we kind of saw their bats and both sides go very quiet. And UConn's pitching pitched very well overall, but like you said, they haven't been pitching well this season. And they absolutely dominated against those 2 teams. So that's always tough for me, is when I don't know if a team is playing poorly or if the other team's just playing well. That being said, I feel like FSU is going to get back to the College World Series. I do like them in game 1, even with Dorsey going. And then I don't think I think FSU sweeps UConn. I'm ready to be proven wrong. I feel like, anything could happen in these series at the same time, but I do think FSU ends up winning both of the first 2 games. They just have UConn has good pitching, at least recently, well, Florida State's got good pitching recently too, but then they also have the bats, and then they're also at home. So I think that's a massive difference here. And maybe UConn can win a game, but I don't think they will.
Your lips to God's ears, because with Mississippi State out, the biggest single team I am holding left is Florida State. That was a team that I was talking about preseason. I thought they were going to be very good this year. And you know what? They've been very good this year. And they got great news. They landed a very good transfer from Jacksonville and starter Evan Crest. He's going to bolster the staff with Jamie Arnold and Cam Leiter for next year. But speaking of Cam Leiter, John, I don't know what's going on. He has an injury of some sort, but the problem in this sport is a lot of times we don't know what an injury is or how severe it is. There's just these secrets, and we just occasionally hear about if a guy's coming back or not. And apparently Cam Leiter hasn't impressed or convinced Link Jarrett enough to let him be a part of this weekend, maybe not even for the rest of the season if they make it into the College World Series. But nevertheless, I think if Carson Dorsey, if he can replicate in some fashion what he did last week at Stenson, I think that's going to be a very big task for anybody trying to get at Florida State, because you have, in my opinion, you have the best remaining arm in the tournament with Chase Burns, Hagen Smith, Trey Savage, Ryan Johnson. Now, I don't think there is a starting pitcher that is anywhere close to the level that Jamie Arnold is at. And, me personally, I'm not going to bet this game just because, I'm holding a lot of Florida State futures. But I think maybe if you throw FSU series and a parlay with a couple other teams we'll talk about in a little bit later. But I do think this is an opportunity here. FSU needs to kind of have a 1-2 sweep weekend. James Tibbs had a very bad week last week. He's got to get back together. And, FSU, as good as they are, they cannot mess around with UConn. You cannot let a team like UConn, who is veteran, who has been here before, hang around. That's a recipe for disaster. They kind of let UCF hang around for a little while in the first game. Then, they blew them away in the second half of the second game. But, I do think this is Florida State all the way, and we need Carson Dorsey to be on his game tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, I think the last thing I would want to say about the series is I do think it's going to be pretty low scoring all weekend long. We've seen, like you said, we've seen UConn's pitch pretty well. We saw Dorsey dominate last week. I don't think Jamie Arnold's going to have any trouble. And then, Florida State's got a pretty good lineup. UConn's not as much, but Florida State still plays low scoring games. They have all season long. It's really been later in the weekends when the back end of their bullpen shows up. That's when their games get very high scoring. So I do think we're going to see some unders in the series too.
I think that's a very good point. So anybody that's looking to take advantage when the totals drop tomorrow, and obviously, Florida State is a big favorite here, and they're going to be they're a big favorite going into Friday. They're definitely going to be a big favorite going into Saturday with Arnold on the mound. I'm curious to see the run line. If you're getting 3.5 or 4.5 with UConn, I think I'm taking it. I think that's probably the better play. I feel like Florida State money line, UConn cover run line in and under is probably like, if you can navigate that to some kind of same game parlay, I think those are worth a shot for sure. But Kyle Hardy coming in with a comment here. Tough for UConn being the very last game of the regionals to the first game of the Supers on the road. Kyle, that's a great point. I was just actually thinking about that the other day. So thank you for bringing that up. UConn played, I think they finished their game like around 11 o'clock Eastern time, maybe midnight. And now they're having to turn around on Friday morning for a noon game Eastern time. So I think that's very interesting. And that also should be a advantage for FSU that they need to take advantage of. All right, John, we have, in my opinion, one of the top game ones I am looking forward to the most. Evansville, the 4 seed that took down East Carolina in their own region with an unbelievable Game 7. They're going to the big, bad Tennessee Volunteers, who are a monster favorite. And as you can see, Tennessee's minus 1,400 on the series to Evansville's Purple Aces, plus 800. John, I'm going to start this one off. I've been talking about this all week. I talked about it after the Aces won their game on Monday. Full send Evansville game 1 money line. I'm not apologizing for it. I'm not taking it back. I know full well, John, that this is a spot where Evansville can very well get blown out. I completely understand that. But I believe they have a path to not only compete with the Volunteers in their own building in game 1, but win outright. And the reason I'm going full unit on this is because I'm okay. I'm going in knowing they're probably going to lose. But if they somehow win and I didn't play it / give it out to my people and they won, I'd feel like the biggest piece of shit for the rest of the season. No doubt about it. And here's why I think Evansville has a path. I gave this out a plus 560 yesterday on FanDuel right when the line dropped. Full unit play because Kenton Deverman is supposed to throw. Now, you know, all season, if you've listened to me, that I've been talking about the Tennessee Volunteers. When they have faced quality starting lefty pitchers, they have had some struggles. Now, you're going to probably go reference their lefty-righty splits, and that's going to tell you, well, hey, you know, their batting average against lefties is 15 to 20 points higher. Their OPS, I think, is a little bit lower. Some of their best players hit lefties really well. Blake Burke's been awesome against lefties, one of his big improvements, by the way. So how does that make sense? They play a lot of lefties in the bullpen. They play in the midweek game. Sometimes they just don't play good lefties at all. But if you go back and look at it, Greg Ferrone, 5 1/3, 1 run. Garrett Gainey, 5 2/3, 4 earned, but he left the game and the reliever gave up a 3-run home run. The runs get charged him. The kid from Ole Miss, Liam Doyle, quality start. Charlie Goldstein, 6 innings, 2 earned runs or no earned runs. So notice the trend here. The lefties can get after the Tennessee Volunteers. And what does Evansville have, John? They have a superstar in the making, freshman left-hander who has been nails. 6 quality starts in his last 7 appearances. The kid eats innings. The kid has been awesome. Kenton Deverman, I think if he is on his A-plus game, he is going to give the Evansville Purple Aces a shot to win this game. And by the way, their offense is no joke either. They have some bats in that lineup going into that launch pad. The Tennessee pitching, the Stamos, AJ Causey, 1-2 Friday punch does not intimidate me. John, I think this is definitely a play that is worth hitting.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. I think pretty much every matchup this weekend, I think you could definitely see. Honestly, I could see everyone going 3 games. Like, there's not one that I would necessarily look at and be like, this team's going to dominate, and they have no chance. So I don't mind that at all. And you have been preaching about these lefties against Tennessee. I don't have too much of an opinion on this game. I do think Tennessee is going to win the series. But the only thing that I would say on this series is if you think that it's going to go 3 games, or if you think Evansville is going to win one of the games, then it makes sense, like you're doing, to play Evansville, right, on the money line in game 1 or game 2, versus playing the over 2.5 games in the series. Because if you think Evansville is going to win, then you're going to be up plus 3.5 units. And I believe it's around plus 250. I want to say plus 300 on DraftKings for to go on over 2.5 games. So if you do think Evansville is going to win a game, go the route that you're doing and play them in the money line.
I do want to point out one more thing. That's a good point. I think, I don't know anybody that's thinking about taking Evansville on the series at plus 800, but if they don't win game 1, they have no shot. I think Tennessee does win the series. I would be ecstatic if the Purple Aces won and if Florida State won their series and they would face each other. And, that's a much better matchup, in my opinion. The one thing is Kenton Deverman has given up 12 taters this year, but it's a little bit of a skewed number because he gave up 4 of them in one start. And, he hasn't really, other than that start, been prone to giving up the long ball recently. And the thing is, obviously, Tennessee's offense can hit 7-8 home runs in a game. But, considering the fact that you're getting the number where you are, and in some places you could probably get it even higher, that plus 450, you get 480s I've seen out there. If you don't like the money line, which I totally get, you're probably going to get at least 4.5, maybe 5.5 at minimum on the run line. And that is a lot of runs. So I think that's also a way to attack it. When that comes out, I'll probably give that out as well, because I fully believe that Evansville can not only hang with Volunteers, but win game 1. Oh, I wanted to talk about that so bad. I've been waiting all day to talk about that. All right, John, take me to Chapel Hill. We have the WVU Mountaineers, who were simply amazing in the Tucson Regional. They ran through Dallas Baptist. They ran through Grand Canyon. And they're going against the UNC Tar Heels, coming off a very dramatic Game 7 win against LSU on Monday. UNC is a pretty big favorite at home. The series price and the Game 1 price are very similar. UNC's already announced they're going to go Shea Sprague. I haven't seen confirmation that WVU is going to go Derek Clark, but how do you handicap this Game 1 and series?
Yeah, so this one, I think North Carolina is one of the best teams, best rosters, I guess I could say, left in the tournament. Like, I think that they have the depth of pitching and the ability to hit that can make it through this tournament, whereas a lot of the teams are mostly just hitting right now. But I think UNC is one of those teams that can do it. That being said, I don't think they sweep the series. I think West Virginia wins at least one game. And we've got the whole, narrative about West Virginia's coach too. I guess games, you could say, if they lose. But last season, he's retiring after this season. I think they're going to win at least one game in this series. They're a good baseball team. And JJ Weatherholt, obviously one of the best players in the nation, he was hurt a lot this season. And you could tell that West Virginia was obviously a lot worse when he was hurt. But when he's healthy and when they've got one of their aces going, then they're a team that can win just about any game. So the way that I'm playing this, I believe that I'm going to go West Virginia plus money in Game 1. If they lose, go right back to it in Game 2. And then Game 3, maybe I'll just sit it out if it goes to that one, because I'm assuming we'll get around a minus 250 line again. But that I would go that route. And then the other route that I was thinking was Chapel Hill Regional over 2.5 games, but it's like minus 110, something like that. And so this goes back to what I was saying earlier. If I think West Virginia is going to win one of these games, play them in Game 1, we're up plus 1.9 units. Play them in, if they lose, play them in Game 2, then we're profiting 0.9. If we play the over 2.5 games at like minus 110, yeah, if we win that, it's 1 unit difference in 0.9 versus 1 if it's our worst case scenario in West Virginia. But I think you've got to go at plus money. I think that's the route that you've got to go with West Virginia, hoping that they win Game 1. The other thought is, if you play that over 2.5 games, if you play over and a half 2 games, you're kind of hoping that West Virginia wins Game 1 in the first place, right? Because you want that second line, you want to have UNC essentially at the minus 110 line in Game 2. That's the reason for doing it. But I don't understand why not just go with West Virginia to win Game 1 instead of playing that. So that's the way that I would look at the series. I do think West Virginia is going to win one game, and I do think there are going to be some unders early. If there's a Game 3, maybe it goes over, but I do like some unders early as well.
Yeah, I talked about West Virginia earlier in the week, and actually it's funny, FanDuel dropped this. So if anybody missed it, I was just browsing on FanDuel, see if lines are coming out, right? And I noticed when lines started dropping, I was like, this has to be a mistake. UNC was plus 200 and West Virginia was minus 265. I'm like, that's got to be a mistake. Let's grab it. So I gave it out, UNC money line plus 200. I played that and then quickly realized they made the mistake. They actually did it for K-State, Virginia, but that lasted like all of 10 seconds. So no real shot. And then I threw out WVU at plus 215 money line. So that's what I'm on game one. But to be honest with you, I think West Virginia is going to win game one. I've been talking about this because, at the end of the day, UNC kind of struggled with the LSU pitching. They were not that good in game one. So Will Helmer shut them down. You got Samuel Dutton, who kind of like loaded the bases early, and LSU was able to, in that first inning, bases loaded, nobody out. They were only to walk away with 2 runs. And then I think, when they attacked Gage Jump in the 9th inning on Monday, that like Gage Jump threw 100 pitches on Friday, and he's a starter. He's not a closer. So that's a little bit different. And, even against Luke Holman did great. It's just Honeycutt got him for one really big shot that turned the entire game. So I think now with Derek Clark supposed to be throwing game one on the mound for WVU, I think this is a really good opportunity to grab them. We know UNC's already come out and said they're going to go with Chase Sprague, who's been pretty solid this year, but he's not an arm that scares me. This is Derek Clark this year. 2.82 ERA. He has 5 games where he's gone 9 innings. 2 games where he's gone 8 innings. This is him in his last 3 starts. 7 shutout, 8 innings, 2 earned, complete game 1 earned run against Dallas Baptist. Then he came in against Grand Canyon to close it out, 2/3 of an inning. This guy's been unreal. He's had 2 bad outings where he got bombed against Texas Tech, 5 2/3, 5 runs, and Cincinnati, 5 innings, 7 runs. But other than that, this kid has been unbelievable this year. And I think right now with him kind of hitting his peak and really, red hot, I think you're getting too big of a number with West Virginia, who has a clear starting pitching advantage and an offense that can score. You have the 2 best players on the field in Vance Honeycutt and JJ Weatherholt. And UNC's offense is legit, but let's not forget that the Mountaineers can score. And I think given how big this number is, you're getting with the pitching advantage and an offense that can put runs on the board. I do think this is worth the WVU play. It's out on my card, and I'm gonna reiterate. I like this series to go 3 games, and I think in order for that to happen, West Virginia's got to take game 1, John.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that West Virginia's pitching, it is very good, Derek Clark and their first couple guys, but then it really falls off the table, right? So if they are going to win a game, I do think it's going to be early in the series. If they win the series, I think they're going to have to win the first 2 games. I think if it goes to a 3rd game that, that 3rd starter and the depth in their bullpen, I don't think they have it. So I do think they're going to be better earlier in the series.
And here's an interesting thing. This is something very interesting. So obviously, as you know, based on what I've been saying, Derek Clark goes deep into games. There's been 3 times where he's failed to go past or touch 6 innings. Cincinnati, they lost. Texas Tech, they lost. Ohio State, 2nd start of the year, they lost. Against Oklahoma State, he went 9 innings, allowed 1 earned run, and they lost 10-1. So I'm not really exactly sure what happened. I think that game probably had to go into extras, and then, the bullpen just completely dismantled. But this is a guy that he's not 5-6 innings. This is a guy that's going to go 8-9 innings. So I think if that's the case, then we have a real opportunity here. And, our boy Crutch said, got to run, but it won't be strong wind. But wind is blowing dead out in Charlottesville. And Crutch, thank you for that note for being our little weatherman over here, because that is our next game. It's the Kansas State Wildcats. Surprise out of the Fayetteville Regional. They're big plus 230 dog at Virginia minus 315, who I personally felt like Mississippi State should have won that region. Might be a little biased, but I do call it how I see it. And it's a pretty big series price number. And John, to be honest, I feel like a lot of people aren't giving Kansas State a shot. Are they wrong, or do you really think Kansas State can win this?
No, I think Kansas State can definitely win it. Kansas coming into this year, a lot of people are talking about Kansas State going to the College World Series. Like a lot of people are talking about it, a lot of people are playing it. I guess you were one of those people. And then we saw at the beginning of the year, Tyson Neighbors got hurt. And then he really struggled when he first came back. And, obviously having a very good closer is big, but it's kind of like the same idea with Brandon Neely. Like neither of them have had great years overall, but all they need is one good outing and when they have their A stuff and you can't hit them. Like they're that kind of pitcher. So Kansas State, and they're the type of team where their bats can go really quiet, but it's not like Virginia has that like dominant pitching. Evan Blanco and Joe Savino have been pitching well, but they can be hit. And then after that, they don't have any of those like shutdown relievers. So I do think Kansas State wins a game in the series. I think this would probably be my handicap, I guess, would be Virginia winning in 3 games, but I think Kansas State wins at least one of the first 2 games. And so I like Kansas State at plus money in game 1 if they lose and go right back to it in game 2.
So I preseason had Kansas State as a Final 8 team for Omaha. And, I don't like getting to this point and then all of a sudden be like, nah, you know what, I'm going to go the other way. I mean, I truly think Kansas State's got a good shot this weekend. So I'm going to ride with K-State in game 1 and the series because I personally feel like the Wildcats are going to have a really good opportunity. And it's simply because their offense is really good. They have a legitimate offense with some superstars. Their numbers don't jump out at you from a power or an average standpoint, but they're one of the few teams in the entire college baseball landscape that still do some of the old school things the right way, and that's steal bases. They're 135 of 59 this year on the base pass. They have all but 2 of their main guys in double figures in steals. And their big dog is probably the best overall player in the tournament. That's Kalen Culpepper, shortstop, K-State. He is one of my favorite guys in the entire college baseball landscape. He should probably be, I would say, a mid to late 20s pick this year in the first round. He's batting .330 with 11 tanks, 17 bags this year, 13 doubles, 6 triples. And the thing to note here, right? Virginia's pitching is not that good. Don't let what happened last week against Mississippi State, who couldn't take advantage of a key situation against a group of junior high kids, skew the fact that the Virginia pitching is not that good. They're really not. Evan Blanco is their best starter, and Mississippi State still managed to get 4 earned off of him. And I think really now we're going to see the fact that like the bullpen is going to have to be called a little bit more into account this weekend. It's not going to be starters going 7-8 innings. Jay Wolford, I mean, come on, bro. He went 8 innings, 2 runs. This guy was never a starter, or he was. They tried him out as a starter, and it was a miserable experience. He's a back-end bullpen guy. He's got a live arm, but being a reliever and being a starter is 2 completely different things. I think Kansas State's going to be able to score here. Now, the big question is, what does their pitching look like? John, if Neighbors is a dog out of the bullpen, if Jackson Wentworth is a dog out of the bullpen, if they can have Owen Barama, be the kind of guy that they were hoping for. Same thing with a guy like, Josh Wintrob, who's been bad. Ty Rule, maybe. I think that Kansas State's going to have a real shot to win both game 1 and the series.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you right there.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see how K-State shakes up their pitching because, like Virginia, I think they're going to have to do a lot of mixing and matching. So I will say the Wildcats, for as good as Virginia's offense, they do have the lineup to hang with them in Charlottesville. And like our boy Crutch said, it might be wind blowing out there this weekend in Charlottesville. So we shall see. It's too big of a number, in my opinion. All right, now we get to a game and series that's a little bit closer. It's NC State at Georgia. Georgia with the home field, minus 150. The game 1 price is identical to the series price. You think the Bulldogs move on here to Omaha, or is their lack of pitching going to run out against NC State?
This is a really tough one, right? Because it's not like NC State has much better pitching, I feel like this is going to be one of the few series that we're going to see a lot of overs. NC State is that team that's just so hit or miss. They either show up and they're a very good team, one of the best in the nation, or they just don't. They are completely no show, and they'll lose. And Georgia, I don't think Georgia's very good. I think they got a very good draw in regionals, and I mean, even here, I think it's a solid draw. I think this will at least go 3 games, and I could honestly see it going anyway in that third game. If I had to, choose, I would probably say Georgia would make it. If I was looking at lines, though, like plus 120, I think that's great value in NC State to win the series. But then, like, same idea in terms of the over 2.5. Like, I think it's going to go 3 games, but I think NC State would probably win the first game. So I would rather play NC State on the money line in the first game than play the over 2.5, because if you're playing the over 2.5, you're essentially trying to get the second team at minus 110. If you think Georgia is going to win the first game, then you can just play NC State at plus 120 in the second game, which is essentially the same as what you would have in terms of like the minus 110 in the over. So you'd obviously choose plus 120 line, minus 110 in the same game. So I like NC State. I think there's good value there. I like them in game 1 too.
Yeah, same thing with me. Georgia, it's been a nice story, but we've talked about it all year, bro. Their hitting is legit, and they have dogs outside Charlie Condon. It's not just Charlie Condon leading the charge. Obviously, he takes them to a different level, but it's been their pitching. All year, their pitching isn't good. Their bullpen's not good. Had Charlie Goldstein been going game 1 here, which I don't know if he has. He barely appeared last week in a bullpen role, and I think he left after a few pitches, something with his oblique. I do think NC State wins this, and I think part of the reason is because you're getting a better price with them as well. But outright teams, while Georgia does have the better offense, John, NC State's got a really capable lineup. They're no joke. They have some real hitters on their lineup. Statistically, it's not close, but you get guys like Alec Makarevich, Jacob Kozart, Eli Serrano, Garrett Pennington. There is a lot of talent in this Wolfpack lineup. And as far as the pitching goes, on paper, their starters have not been good this year. Absolutely not. But the thing is, I feel like their starters are more talented. In the past, we've seen their starters, they've had stretches where they've been dominant. They've been dominant. It's some of these bad outings, they blow up and it eats away at their stats. The one problem I will say is when you look at Sam Highfield, who is their Friday guy, and I don't know if he's going yet, it hasn't been confirmed. Him and Dominic Fritton, they've allowed 37 home runs between the two of them. Highfield 18, Fritton 19. That's bad when you're going against one of the top home run hitting teams in the country. Now maybe NC State mixes it up and goes Ryan Marone, who's got 10 starts out of 15 appearances. He's been pretty solid this year. It remains to be seen. I do think it's going to be a lot of high-scoring games this weekend, but ultimately, I think NC State's going to come out here. I mean, we saw Georgia struggle, barely beat Army. They barely beat Georgia Tech. They're at home in one of the easiest draws you could have, and they almost lost 2 games. I think this is NC State. I think they're the better overall team. And you get the fact right that Wes Johnson, he's a first-time head coach in this league. I think this leans NC State, but I will say the best play, in my opinion, is over 2.5 games. You can get that right in the minus 120 range. I think that is by far the best play. This is the series that we both believe is going 3 games, JB.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to go 3 games. I like that play. I like playing NC State. And, if NC State does win that first game, then you'd have essentially Georgia at minus 110 for that second game. So that's a good look too. I think both are great plays.
Absolutely. All right, let's get something that's probably the last big one we have. A&M hosting Oregon. Oregon's plus 250 with the Aggies being minus 345. Series prices, Aggies minus a big 425 and Oregon's a whopping plus 300. I guess the question is here, John, do you think the Ducks can get a game, or does A&M just break out the brooms and sweep them in 2?
Yeah, so Texas A&M is one of the most complete teams left in the tournament. They don't have the best pitching, but they can get through, especially this round. Like I think this 3-game series is perfectly set up for them, where they don't have to overextend any of their bullpen arms and they can use their top aces. But if we look at Oregon, and they made it to this exact same spot last year and ended up losing. I believe it was in 3 games.
It's Oral Roberts.
Yeah, and obviously this is a much tougher matchup. But if you look at their regional, they barely beat UCSB and San Diego. They weren't scoring at all. They just had dominant pitching performances. They scored, I don't know the exact numbers, but 2, 3, 4 runs in every game, and that's how they won. They were just barely outscoring the other team. You can't do that against Texas A&M. You're going to have to score a lot of runs and pitch extremely well. So I just think this is a terrible matchup for them. I like Texas A&M. If you want to play it, you could go under 2.5 games because that, I guess, like you said, that would be the look.
Yeah. So A&M series was parlayed with Tennessee series and Florida State. Bet Rivers, that was parlayed. I got it for -121. I don't typically like doing that, but I want to try and get some involvement and give you guys an opportunity to learn how to play some of these games, give you an opinion on it. I think ultimately, when I looked at the draw, and obviously A&M got a very favorable draw. I think A&M, Kentucky, and Tennessee were probably the 3 most favorable regional draws. And then ultimately, A&M and Tennessee had the 2, I would say, most favorable supers. I saw this coming. Oregon was a team I picked to win the region and play Texas A&M. They had a tough game with Texas, but I expected them to win, and that's what happened. And Oregon is a fun team this time of year, because they play on the West Coast. Not a lot of people know about them. Pac-12 baseball in general is very under the radar. The only reason people really know about Oregon State so much is because Travis Bazzana, and they've been a ranked team for most of the year, if not all of it, and being in the top 10 for a lot of it as well. So last week against San Diego and 2 games against Santa Barbara in a 3-game sweep, they had to come back in the 11th and beat San Diego 5-4. They beat UCSB 2-1, then they beat them 3-0. So they only scored 10 runs in 3 games. And granted, Santa Barbara has very good pitching, even though, it's a little bit weighted. It's weighted a little bit differently because of the conference they play in. But A&M, for my money, I just think they're just too much more talented. I don't think Oregon's got the offense. The pitching can keep this somewhat competitive because A&M's lineup has been struggling a little bit for the most part lately. But I do think A&M is the side here. Brian Prager, game 1, bounce back. I would imagine he goes Friday, get it off to a hot start. Then you bring in literally somebody to get game 2, whether that's Sadeo or Tanner Jones or Lampkin. I think this is A&M all the way, and the way to do it is probably under 2.5 games and or A&M in a series parlay with Tennessee and FSU. All right, to the other Florida team we go, the Gators. These are lines that have been moving a lot. So especially this Florida Clemson, there's a lot of different numbers out here. I just grabbed DraftKings just to have something as a placeholder. But as a reminder, please do shop around. Gators, game 1, series, both plus 135. Clemson is -175 here and -165 on the series. John, I'll start. I got the Gators winning this series. I got them winning game 1. I think this is why I didn't want them in the tournament. This is why everyone's like, oh, they're talented, or people were saying they're not talented. Bro, I didn't say that. I didn't say they weren't talented. I just said off merit. I personally don't agree, but I was afraid they would get in the tournament and pull some bullshit like 2022 Ole Miss being the last team in. Then all of a sudden they get hot and they start playing good baseball, and then they're gonna go like a tornado and rip through everything in their path. I think that's what's happening here. I think if their pitching continues to deliver like it did last week against 2 somewhat, I would say, pretty good lineups in OK State and Nebraska, Clemson's lineup's really dangerous, but I think Florida is going to handle this. Game 1 and series, it's going 3.
I'm with you. I think it's going to be a 3-game series. I like Florida to win game 1. I think Florida wins the series. I do think Clemson ends up getting a game, but Florida's had the talent all season long. They just could not put it together. Like, they lost a lot of midweek games, but they were winning series against very good teams. And with Liam Peterson pitching well at the start of that rotation now, he's been very, very good lately, pitching like an ace. And so you get him. Cags got lit up in the tournament, but, he can pitch well too. And then you have Brandon Neely who can come in and give you 4, even 5 innings if you really need of just dominance. So they're built, and, he has like a 6.4 ERA on the season too. So they're built like they can make it deep. And Clemson, they finally got over that hump of making it past regionals at home. I don't know. I like Florida to win this one too.
I think it's worth noting Clemson last week, they easily could have lost. 5 Point put them to the brink. It required another comeback, which I've said all year. I don't know if I think that's sustainable. Like, obviously you need to be able to come back, but when you're relying off 25 comeback wins, eventually there's going to be a deficit you can't come back from. High Point pushed them to the brink. Coastal Carolina in the first game pushed them to the brink. In the second game, both games actually, Coastal Carolina was running themselves out of innings. The defense was atrocious. They were just completely playing with a lack of fundamental baseball. And, Coastal kind of helped Clemson get past, because definitely the first game, the Chanticleers should have won, I felt. The second game kind of got away from them, and it's hard to say they should have won that game. But, I do think if Florida continues to play the way they have, clean baseball, doing the little things the right way, Clemson's not going to be able to rely on these teams beating themselves. So if Florida's able to just kind of keep playing their game, it's a small ballpark. They have a lot of home run hitters. Cags could have 3-4 home runs on the weekend if it goes 3 games. We don't know. That's the capability. So I think especially the fact that you're getting the Gators, who have been here before. They were in the finals last year. They understand what it takes, because Clemson, quite frankly, has struggled in the regionals over the last few years. It's been a struggle for them. And this is the Florida Gators calm under pressure. Their backs have been against the wall for the last 2 months, and they're finding a way. And I think that kind of battle-tested, resilience is going to be the thing that drives them home. And I think a cool storyline, Eric Bakich, Kevin O'Sullivan, the 2 head coaches for the respective teams, over 20 years ago, were assistant coaches together at Clemson. And I think it's a cool full story circle. But, I think this is Florida for the both of us here, JB.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Sunday Puncher, Florida, only team still standing that went 5 games last weekend. Most taxed arms over series, agree. Definitely a 3-game series. It doesn't matter what your stats look like. You guys just find a way to get it done. You just get guys that stack outs. That's what teams do. And I think it's going to be a great series. Last but not least, Oregon State. Even money game 1 against Kentucky, -130. It's 10 cents difference on the series price. JB, Kentucky or Oregon State?
Yeah, this one's tough for me. My futures this year were absolutely awful, like straight up terrible. I had them on like Duke, UCSB, Arkansas. Oregon State is my only future left. I have them at +300 to make the College World Series. So I'm kind of just sticking with that for now here. The only other play I'm making is over 2.5 games. I really do think that this is going to go 3. I think each of these teams gets at least 1. So I'm sticking with my future there, because I really do think that these first couple games could go any way. But I do think that my favorite play here is for this to go 3 games.
I do think it's going to go 3 games, and Oregon State was one of my Final 8 Omaha teams preseason. I've been involved in Oregon State very early on this year. And, obviously FSU is my biggest, but Oregon State's the second biggest. Obviously the dream scenario is FSU and Oregon State play each other. That's what I'm hoping for. But, I'm not betting this based on what I hope for. I'm betting it based on the preseason inclination that I had, not backing down when it gets to this point. But I also think that it's a really good matchup, and it's a winnable matchup for Oregon State. I really feel like the fact is the Kentucky pitching is not that great. Sure, Mason Moore was good last week. Okay, fine. Mason Moore has been a lot better towards the end of the year. No problem. Their offense, they have a good offense. Ryan Waldschmidt, Miller Petre, whatever. But at the end of the day, Oregon State, I feel like, is the better team. They have the best player in the entire matchup with Travis Bazzana. Their lineup 1 through 9 can all go deep. They can hit 5-6 home runs in a game. They have the pitching advantage, in my opinion, in the game 1 and game 2 starters with Aiden May and Jacob Kamatz. They have a really good closer in Bridger Holmes. To me, they have a more complete team. I feel like Kentucky also, they almost blew a 10-run lead to Western Michigan. They played – their best team was Indiana State. Indiana State, in my opinion, is not better than UC Irvine, who they just played. Oregon State just played. I think this is Beavers, man. I do think it's 3 games, but ultimately, I got Oregon State going to the College World Series Finals out of this side of the bracket, and that must happen. This must happen for them to get there. And I definitely really like the advantage if Aiden May's throwing game 1, which I believe he would be, and you're getting Oregon State as a dog. I would say the one tough thing is maybe a little bit of the travel, but then again, you've had like 5 days to adjust, and of course the SEC, the home team, getting a little bit more of a favor. But John, this is Beavers, baby. This is Beavers country.
Yeah, I think my only question mark with them is how they're going to do on the road, because they haven't been nearly as good this year, but yep. I still think they win the series. All you need to do is win 2 of 3. It's not like you need to go, win 10 of 15 on the road.
Listen, if Aiden May gets you game 1 and now you have to win one of the final 2 games, I think that you can't ask to be in a better position. So, I think that's big. I think the Oregon State series win hinges on Aiden May. He's got to be on his game. He's got to be nails. And it wouldn't hurt if he could go 7 innings, maybe 8 on Friday. Bazzana's got to be a dog. Bazzana's got to be a dog this weekend. Sunday Puncher said, Beaver Fever, Kentucky lack of offense will haunt them and ultimately sink them here in the Pac-12 Swan Song. Oregon State makes Omaha. Hey, man, that's the goal, baby. Sunday Puncher, that's the goal. That'll wrap up all the series and the game 1s. John, was there anything else that you felt compelled to share?
Not really. I think the only other thing is overall futures, and I haven't really – I think I'm going to wait for these series to get done to take a look again when the College World Series gets started, because like I said, I think there could be a lot of upsets in this round. And, I want to see, this is the round where you kind of see what teams are really made of, how good these starters actually are, how hot the offenses are. So I would wait for those for the most part.
Yeah, same here. I have some futures left, and I personally just don't. I was reconsidering like adding more to Oregon State and adding more to Florida State. But in my opinion, given the position, I felt like, if I do that, it just keeps adding a little bit more stress to me. And like, let's just ride what we have. And then, let's make sure they get there. I'd rather, and this is what I did with NC State. I'd rather trade the better number for more information. It doesn't matter if you take the better number if they don't get there. So I'd rather know that they're going to get there, because if you're in a coin flip matchup, you're in a matchup that they can very well lose. I'd rather take a lesser number just to know that they're in, and then you could figure out a way. You're going to have to lay more money, but goddamn, if you want to, it takes money to make money.
Yeah, and I think you learn a lot more in these weekend series. Regionals, you learn a little bit, but you don't, like I said, even like we were talking about with UConn earlier, is like, I don't know if UConn was really playing that well or if Oklahoma and Duke were actually just playing that poorly. And so I think you get to find a lot of those things out in these series.
Absolutely. We got our boys from College Baseball Insider. Shout out, boys. We got Oregon State. Absolutely. And they're like, I think it's mostly chalk that comes through. The upsets were last weekend. Maybe. I think there's going to be some upsets. I think there's going to be several chalk lattes, but we're going to see a few upsets here. And we're going to see Evansville win game 1 tomorrow. Kenton Deverman, they're gonna hoist the statue in his honor down at Evansville, wherever the fuck that is. I don't even know where it is on the map, geographically speaking, of course. Do you know?
I want to say Illinois, but I don't know.
I don't know, man. Wait, best chance for a 3 seed to pull the upset, and I'm guessing we're talking series prices. So if it's series, I think the best 3 seed is going to be West Virginia. If they get game 1 against Derek Clark, I think that's most likely going to happen. Then I would say Kansas State, West Virginia, Evansville's in Indiana. West Virginia is best game 1 and best series 3 seed to get the upset here. And real quick, 50% of game 1 dogs will win. Well, let's hope a couple, the ones that I don't want to. Well, let's hope UConn loses. Kansas State is especially a team that wins game 1. I agree. That's what we were talking about today. But we got to get out of here. I do have a haircut. You guys can't have me looking ugly. I got to make sure I'm handsome again. So we will see you. Love it, fellas. Keep growing the game. You too, guys. Come on. I got to come out with a goddamn guide like you got. I gotta get on that. Next year, I'm gonna work on that. But thank you so much for tuning in. Best of luck this weekend. And don't forget to pay attention to our tweets. We're going to have some more plays coming out. And who knows? Maybe we have another podcast tomorrow. Probably not. Tomorrow's a little tough. But keep in touch for our tweets. And best of luck this weekend, guys. We appreciate you. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you, man.